Hey there, garden friends, and welcome back to Botanic Haven. If you're new here, this channel is all about helping you grow amazing plants, create beautiful green spaces both indoors and out, and really connect with the natural world around you. Today, I want to tell you about something absolutely fascinating. A plant that literally fed millions of people, sustained entire civilizations, and then, almost overnight, became one of the most banned and controversial crops in modern history. This isn't just a story about botany or agriculture, it's a story about politics, fear, misinformation, and how a single plant became caught in the crossfire of changing times. And honestly, understanding this history might change how you think about plants, policy, and what we choose to grow in our own gardens. So let's talk about hemp. Now, before anyone clicks away or gets worried, let me be super clear. We're talking about the agricultural crop that's been grown for thousands of years for fiber, seeds, oil, and countless other uses. This is the plant that made rope for ships, fabric for clothing, paper for books, and food for families. For most of human history, hemp was just another useful crop, like wheat or cotton. But in the 20th century, something strange happened. Governments around the world began banning it, demonizing it, and treating anyone who grew it like a criminal. The result? A plant that had fed and clothed humanity for millennia nearly disappeared from our fields and our consciousness. Today, we're finally starting to rediscover what our ancestors always knew, that hemp is an incredibly valuable, sustainable, and versatile crop that deserves a place in modern agriculture and even in our home gardens. The story of hemp goes back thousands of years. Archaeological evidence shows that humans were using hemp fibers as far back as 8000 BCE in ancient Mesopotamia and China. The Chinese were particularly advanced in their use of hemp. They made paper from it as early as 100 BCE, and hemp seed oil was a dietary staple. Ancient texts describe hemp as one of the 5 essential grains, right alongside rice and wheat. In Europe, hemp became crucial during the Age of Exploration. Every sailing ship needed massive amounts of rope, and hemp fiber was the strongest, most durable material available. A single large ship could require over 50 tons of hemp rope and canvas. Without hemp, the great voyages of discovery simply wouldn't have been possible. Farmers across Europe and eventually in the American colonies grew hemp as a matter of course. In fact, in colonial America, farmers in some regions were legally required to grow hemp because it was considered so essential to the economy and national defense. Hemp seeds were another massive benefit. They're incredibly nutritious, packed with protein, omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, and various vitamins and minerals. In times of famine or food scarcity, hemp seeds kept people alive. They could be eaten raw, ground into flour, or pressed for oil. The oil was used not just for cooking, but also for lamps, soap, and paint. Meanwhile, the leftover seed cake after pressing was perfect livestock feed. Nothing went to waste. Farmers loved hemp because it was easy to grow, required minimal inputs, improved soil health, and provided multiple harvests. You could harvest the fiber from the stalks, collect seeds for food and oil, and still have plant material left over for animal bedding or composting. It was the ultimate sustainable crop. Renewable, versatile, and environmentally friendly. Throughout the 19th century, hemp remained an important agricultural commodity. The United States was producing thousands of tons annually, with Kentucky becoming particularly famous for its high-quality hemp. The fabric made from hemp was durable and long-lasting, perfect for work clothes, bags, and household textiles. Hemp paper was common, and many important documents, including early drafts of the Declaration of Independence, were written on hemp paper. The plant was so ordinary, so ubiquitous, that most people didn't give it a second thought. It was just hemp, useful, practical, and completely normal. But then, in the early 20th century, everything changed. The transformation didn't happen because hemp suddenly became dangerous or because scientists discovered something harmful about it. No, the change was driven by politics, economics, and a campaign of misinformation that would have lasting consequences for decades to come. The ban on hemp is closely tied to the prohibition of marijuana, even though industrial hemp and marijuana are quite different. Yes, they're the same species, cannabis sativa, but they're different varieties bred for completely different purposes. Industrial hemp is bred to be tall with strong fibers and produces only trace amounts of THC, the psychoactive compound found in marijuana. Marijuana varieties are bred to maximize THC content and are typically short, bushy plants. Think of it like comparing a field corn used for animal feed with sweet corn you eat on the cob. Same species, very different plants. But in the 1930s, anti-drug campaigners in the United States deliberately blurred this distinction. They used fear tactics, racial prejudice, and sensational stories to convince the public that all cannabis was dangerous. The 1937 Marijuana Tax Act effectively banned all cannabis cultivation in the US, including industrial hemp. Farmers who had been growing hemp for generations suddenly found themselves criminalized. The ban on hemp is closely tied to the prohibition of marijuana, even though industrial hemp and marijuana are quite different. Yes, they're the same species, Cannabis sativa, but they're different varieties bred for completely different purposes. Industrial hemp is bred to be tall with strong fibers and produces only trace amounts of THC, the psychoactive compound found in marijuana. Marijuana varieties are bred to maximize THC content and are typically short, bushy plants. Think of it like comparing a field corn used for animal feed with sweet corn you eat on the cob. Same species, very different plants. But in the 1930s, anti-drug campaigners in the United States deliberately blurred this distinction. They used fear tactics, racial prejudice, and sensational stories to convince the public that all cannabis was dangerous. The 1937 Marijuana Tax Act effectively banned all cannabis cultivation in the US, including industrial hemp. Farmers who had been growing hemp for generations suddenly found themselves criminalized. If this guide has helped you, write 1 in the comments, and if not, write 0. This way, I'll know which tips are most useful for your garden. The impact was enormous. Hemp production in America plummeted almost overnight. During World War II, there was a brief reprieve when the government launched the Hemp for Victory campaign, encouraging farmers to grow hemp again for the war effort since supplies of Manila hemp from the Philippines had been cut off. Farmers responded, and hemp production surged. But as soon as the war ended, the ban came back into force, and hemp disappeared from American fields. Other countries followed America's lead, implementing their own bans. By the 1960s and 70s, hemp cultivation was illegal in most Western nations. An ancient crop that had served humanity for millennia was now contraband. The irony is almost painful. Hemp, which requires no pesticides, enriches the soil, and provides sustainable fiber and food, was banned while chemical-intensive crops like cotton expanded dramatically. For decades, hemp remained in this strange legal limbo. Older generations remembered when hemp was just another farm crop, but younger people grew up associating all cannabis with illegal drugs. The knowledge and infrastructure for hemp cultivation largely disappeared. Farmers stopped saving hemp seeds. Processing equipment rusted away or was repurposed. The traditional varieties that had been carefully selected and adapted to different climates were lost. It was an agricultural tragedy, really. Centuries of breeding and knowledge just erased in a generation or two. But here's where the story starts to turn around. Starting in the 1990s, some countries began to reconsider. Canada legalized industrial hemp cultivation in 1998, and European nations expanded their hemp programs. These countries recognized that industrial hemp posed no drug risk and offered significant agricultural and environmental benefits. The modern hemp revival is fascinating to watch. As laws have slowly changed, farmers and researchers have been rediscovering what makes hemp so special. From a gardening and agricultural perspective, hemp is almost a dream crop. It grows quickly. Most varieties are ready to harvest in just 3 to 4 months. It's naturally resistant to most pests and diseases, so you don't need pesticides. The deep taproot breaks up compacted soil and brings nutrients up from deep layers, improving soil structure for future crops. Hemp is also incredibly efficient at pulling carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and storing it in the plant tissue. Some studies suggest that hemp is even more effective than trees at carbon sequestration when you consider the speed of growth and the amount of biomass produced per acre. Let me tell you about my friend Oliver, who's a farmer in a region where hemp cultivation recently became legal again. He was skeptical at first. He'd been growing conventional crops his whole life and thought hemp was just a fad, but his soil was depleted from years of intensive corn and soybean rotation, and he was curious about alternatives. He started with just a few acres as an experiment. What surprised him most was how easy hemp was to grow compared to his other crops. He planted in late spring after the last frost, and the plants shot up fast, shading out weeds naturally without herbicides. He didn't need to apply pesticides because the plants stayed healthy on their own. By late summer, his test field was a sea of tall, vigorous plants. When he harvested and sent the fibre and seeds to processors, he was amazed at the variety of products that came back, everything from textiles to building materials to food products. The applications for modern hemp are mind-boggling. Hemp fibre is still used for rope and textiles, but now it's also being used in composite materials for cars, in construction materials like hempcrete, a concrete alternative made from hemp herds and lime that's both strong and insulating, in paper production, and even in bioplastics. Hemp seeds and hemp seed oil have exploded in popularity as health foods. You can find them in grocery stores, health food shops, and supplements. The seeds are genuinely nutritious with an ideal ratio of omega fatty acids and all 9 essential amino acids, making them a complete protein source. Hemp oil is used in cosmetics, skincare products, and as a cooking oil. Even the byproducts have value. Hemp biomass can be turned into biofuel, animal bedding, or mulch for gardens. What's really exciting from an environmental perspective is hemp's potential as a sustainable alternative to some of our most resource-intensive crops. Take cotton, for example. Cotton is one of the most pesticide-intensive crops in the world, requiring massive amounts of water and chemical inputs. Hemp, in contrast, typically needs no pesticides and requires much less water. Hemp fibre can be processed into fabric that's durable, breathable, and gets softer with each wash. It's not going to replace cotton entirely, but it can certainly reduce our dependence on such a resource-intensive crop. Similarly, hemp paper doesn't require the clear-cutting of forests. Hemp grows to maturity in months, not decades like trees, and produces more usable fibre per acre than timber. The paper industry has been slow to adopt hemp due to infrastructure investments in wood pulp processing, but the environmental benefits are undeniable. Now, if you're thinking about the gardening side of things, you might be wondering whether you can or should grow hemp at home. The answer depends entirely on where you live and what your local laws permit. In regions where personal cultivation of industrial hemp is legal, it can actually be a fun and useful garden plant. Hemp grows tall and fast, which means it can serve as a natural privacy screen or windbreak in your garden. The deep roots help break up clay soil and can improve soil structure for other plants. Some gardeners grow hemp specifically to harvest the seeds for their own consumption. Freshly harvested hemp seeds are delicious and nutritious with a mild, nutty flavour. You can sprinkle them on salads, blend them into smoothies, or even make your own hemp milk at home. The plants themselves are quite attractive in a wild, natural sort of way, with distinctive palmate leaves and a vigorous, upright growth habit. I want to share another quick story about a gardener named Rose who lives in an area where hemp cultivation is permitted with proper licensing. She's passionate about sustainable living and was frustrated with how few truly eco-friendly options existed for some household products. When hemp became legal in her region, she jumped at the opportunity. She got the necessary permits and dedicated a corner of her small farm to growing hemp. Her goal wasn't commercial production, she just wanted to experiment and produce some materials for her own use. She grew a fibre variety and harvested it at maturity. Processing the fibre by hand was labour-intensive, but she found the process meditative and satisfying. She eventually learned to ret the fibres, a process where you separate the useful fibres from the woody core, clean them, and even spin them into rough cordage. I want to share another quick story about a gardener named Rose who lives in an area where hemp cultivation is permitted with proper licensing. She's passionate about sustainable living and was frustrated with how few truly eco-friendly options existed for some household products. When hemp became legal in her region, she jumped at the opportunity. She got the necessary permits and dedicated a corner of her small farm to growing hemp. Her goal wasn't commercial production, she just wanted to experiment and produce some materials for her own use. She grew a fibre variety and harvested it at maturity. Processing the fibre by hand was labour-intensive, but she found the process meditative and satisfying. She eventually learned to ret the fibres, a process where you separate the useful fibres from the woody core, clean them, and even spin them into rough cordage. She used her homegrown hemp to make garden twine, which was stronger and lasted longer than anything she'd bought at the store. She also saved seeds and used them in her cooking throughout the winter. I want to share another quick story about a gardener named Rose who lives in an area where hemp cultivation is permitted with proper licensing. She's passionate about sustainable living and was frustrated with how few truly eco-friendly options existed for some household products. When hemp became legal in her region, she jumped at the opportunity. She got the necessary permits and dedicated a corner of her small farm to growing hemp. Her goal wasn't commercial production, she just wanted to experiment and produce some materials for her own use. She grew a fiber variety and harvested it at maturity. Processing the fiber by hand was labor-intensive, but she found the process meditative and satisfying. She eventually learned to ret the fibers, a process where you separate the useful fibers from the woody core, clean them, and even spin them into rough cordage. She used her homegrown hemp to make garden twine, which was stronger and lasted longer than anything she'd bought at the store. She also saved seeds and used them in her cooking throughout the winter. Rose's experience highlights something important. Hemp connects us back to traditional, hands-on skills that we've largely lost in our modern, industrialized world. There's something deeply satisfying about growing a plant, processing it yourself, and creating something useful from it. It's the same satisfaction you get from growing tomatoes and making your own sauce, or growing flowers and arranging your own bouquets. Hemp takes this a step further because the plant offers so many possibilities. You're not just growing food or decoration, you're growing raw material that can become fabric, rope, paper, food, oil, or building material. It's a reminder of how resourceful and self-sufficient humans once were, and how much we've gained and lost with industrial specialization. From a broader agricultural perspective, the rehabilitation of hemp's reputation is part of a larger shift toward more sustainable, diversified farming systems. For too long, modern agriculture has focused on monocultures, vast fields of a single crop, heavily dependent on synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. This approach has degraded soil, polluted waterways, and reduced biodiversity. Farmers and researchers are increasingly recognizing that we need more diverse crop rotations and plants that work with natural systems rather than against them. Hemp fits perfectly into this vision. It's a low-input crop that improves rather than depletes soil. It can be integrated into rotations to break pest cycles and add organic matter. It provides habitat for beneficial insects, and it produces valuable yields without requiring the chemical arsenal that conventional crops often demand. One of the most promising developments in recent years has been the growth of regional hemp processing infrastructure. For hemp to truly succeed as a crop, farmers need convenient access to processing facilities that can handle the fiber, seeds, and other plant materials. During the decades when hemp was banned, almost all of this infrastructure disappeared. Farmers in newly legal regions often struggled to find anyone who could process their hemp, which made cultivation economically unviable. But slowly, investment is returning. New processing plants are opening, equipped with modern machinery that can efficiently separate fibers, extract oil, and prepare hemp materials for various industries. As this infrastructure grows, it becomes easier and more profitable for farmers to include hemp in their operations, which creates a positive feedback loop. More hemp means more processing capacity, which encourages more hemp cultivation. There's also growing interest in hemp as part of regenerative agriculture systems. Regenerative agriculture aims not just to sustain resources, but to actively improve them, building soil health, increasing biodiversity, and sequestering carbon. Hemp is a natural fit because of its fast growth, deep roots, and minimal need for inputs. Some farmers are using hemp as part of complex polyculture systems, growing it alongside other crops and integrating livestock. Others are using hemp specifically for soil remediation. The plant is known for its ability to absorb heavy metals and other contaminants from soil, a process called phytoremediation. While you wouldn't want to eat or use hemp grown in contaminated soil, it can be an effective way to gradually clean up polluted sites, with the contaminated biomass disposed of safely afterward. Let's talk about the nutritional side a bit more, because hemp seeds really are remarkable. A typical serving of hemp seeds, about 3 tablespoons, grams, provides roughly 10 grams of protein, which is substantial for such a small amount. They contain all 9 essential amino acids, making them a complete protein, which is relatively rare in plant-based foods. They're also loaded with healthy fats, particularly gamma-linolenic acid, GLA, which has anti-inflammatory properties. People who incorporate hemp seeds into their diet often report improved skin health, better digestion, and more stable energy levels throughout the day. The seeds have a mild, pleasant taste that works well in both sweet and savory dishes. You can blend them into smoothies for a protein boost, sprinkle them on yogurt or oatmeal, add them to baked goods, or use hemp seed butter as an alternative to peanut or almond butter. Hemp seed oil is equally versatile. Cold-pressed hemp oil has a lovely green color and a nutty, grassy flavor that works beautifully in salad dressings and dips. Because of its high omega-3 content, it's best used raw rather than for cooking at high heat, which can degrade the beneficial fats. In skincare, hemp oil is prized for being lightweight and easily absorbed, making it suitable even for oily skin types. It's moisturizing without being greasy and contains antioxidants that may help protect skin from environmental damage. Many people use hemp oil as a natural facial moisturizer, and it's increasingly common in commercial skincare formulations. The cosmetic industry has embraced hemp not just for its benefits, but also as a marketing point. Consumers are increasingly interested in natural, plant-based ingredients, and hemp ticks all those boxes. The story of hemp's prohibition and gradual legalization is also a reminder of how policy, misinformation, and cultural attitudes can override common sense and scientific evidence. For decades, hemp remained illegal despite clear evidence that industrial hemp posed no threat and offered significant benefits. The stigma was so strong that even mentioning hemp in a positive light could draw suspicion. Researchers who wanted to study hemp faced enormous bureaucratic hurdles. Farmers who remembered the old days when hemp was just another crop had to stay silent or risk association with illegal activities. This climate of fear and misinformation prevented rational discussion and delayed the reintroduction of a valuable crop by decades. It's a sobering lesson about the importance of evidence-based policy and the dangers of letting fear and prejudice drive decision-making. Thankfully, attitudes are changing rapidly. As more regions legalize hemp and people see the benefits firsthand, the old stigma is fading. Younger generations who didn't live through the peak of prohibition are more open-minded, and they're driving demand for sustainable products. Companies are increasingly transparent about using hemp in their products, treating it as a selling point rather than something to hide. Agricultural schools and universities are once again teaching hemp cultivation techniques. Research funding is becoming available to study optimal growing conditions, breeding improvements, and new applications. This knowledge was once common but was largely lost during the Prohibition era. Now we're having to relearn and rediscover combining traditional wisdom with modern science to unlock hemp's full potential. I should mention that while we're seeing progress, there are still challenges. The regulatory framework for hemp is often confusing and inconsistent. Some regions require expensive licensing, regular inspections, and testing to ensure THC levels stay below legal limits. These requirements can be burdensome, especially for small farmers who want to experiment with hemp as part of a diversified operation. There are also banking and insurance issues in some areas because financial institutions remain wary of anything cannabis-related, even when it's completely legal. These practical barriers slow adoption and make it harder for the hemp industry to compete with established crops. Advocacy and continued policy reform are needed to create a truly level playing field where hemp can succeed based on its merits rather than being handicapped by outdated prejudices. Looking forward, the future of hemp looks bright. Consumer demand for sustainable, eco-friendly products continues to grow, and hemp is perfectly positioned to meet that demand. The fashion industry is exploring hemp textiles as an alternative to water-intensive cotton and petroleum-based synthetics. The construction industry is increasingly interested in hempcrete and other hemp-based building materials that offer insulation, carbon sequestration, and sustainability benefits. The food industry sees hemp seeds and oil as premium health products with strong market potential. Even the automotive and aerospace industries are experimenting with hemp-based composites that are strong, lightweight, and more environmentally friendly than traditional materials. As processing technology improves and economies of scale develop, hemp products will become more affordable and accessible. For us as gardeners and plant enthusiasts, the hemp story is inspiring because it shows how plants can be resilient and how human relationships with plants can change over time. Hemp survived decades of prohibition, kept alive by activists, researchers, and a few determined farmers who refused to let it disappear completely. Now it's making a comeback, reclaiming its place as a valuable agricultural crop. It reminds us that plants aren't just passive resources. They're part of our shared history, culture, and future. Every plant has a story, and sometimes those stories involve triumph over adversity. Hemp's journey from ancient staple to banned substance to modern rediscovery is a testament to the enduring value of useful plants and the importance of questioning policies that don't align with evidence and common sense. As we wrap up today's deep dive into the fascinating world of hemp, I hope you've gained a new appreciation for this remarkable plant and its complex history. Whether you're interested in sustainable agriculture, nutritious foods, eco-friendly materials, or just love learning about plants with interesting stories, hemp has something to offer. If you're in a region where cultivation is legal and you're interested in trying it yourself, do your research, get the proper permissions, and start small. Growing hemp can be a rewarding experience that connects you to thousands of years of agricultural tradition while also participating in a more sustainable future. If cultivation isn't an option, consider supporting the hemp industry by choosing hemp products when you have the choice, whether that's hemp fabric clothing, hemp seed snacks, or hemp-based building materials. Remember, every plant we grow and every choice we make in our gardens and our purchases has an impact. By understanding the history and potential of plants like hemp, we can make more informed decisions that benefit not just our own gardens, but the wider environment and future generations. The story of hemp is ultimately a story about resilience, sustainability, and the incredible versatility of the plant kingdom. It's a reminder that sometimes the solutions to modern problems can be found in ancient wisdom and traditional crops that we've overlooked or forgotten. Thanks so much for spending this time with me today here on Botanic Haven. I'd love to hear your thoughts on hemp, whether you have experience with it, questions about it, or just want to share your perspective on sustainable agriculture and gardening. Drop your comments below, and I'll see you in the next one, where we'll continue exploring the wonderful world of plants together. Happy gardening, everyone!